Biden says bupkis. That's Big Joe, pretending not to hear. Teams of reporters shouting questions about classified documents found in a locked closet at the president's think tank, the Penn Biden Center. This story comes after classified materials found at former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence prompted an FBI raid and so much criticism from Democrats. Joining me now with his reaction is executive editor at the Common Sense Society, Chris Bedford. Chris, welcome. Let me just start with this. The timing of this. So the White House officials notified the National Archives on November 2nd. The National Archives, it was a week before the midterm elections. The National Archives took possession of the documents the following day. Why in the hell are we finding out about it now?
Because of politics as usual in Washington, D.C. And we knew when we saw the Trump raid, or the FBI raid on Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago, just like we knew when we saw all the heavy-handed raids of the last number of years, that those sorts of things really only go one way. It's who's served politically, and it's not going to be something that takes care of Republicans, especially those associated with Donald Trump. So they were going to hold that sort of thing until this last kind of minute, and then they're going to act like it's pretty standard and pretty normal. I mean, the reality is when we saw the accusations against Donald Trump, everyone in America was right to be immediately skeptical that there was actually anything there. And I'm skeptical here. I think that a lot of these papers, a lot of these sorts of crimes are overblown when they're politically salient. But there's a massive double standard, one that determines is determined by who's in power. And that's if you're on the wrong side, like Donald Trump was, you get raided. And if you're on the right side, like Joe Biden in the White House, well, you'll probably just be fine.
Right. I don't need to sit here and compare the volume of the documents. It's just, again, the double standard and how you handle classified information. And there were reports that it is very telling how the press reports on this. It's the fall, or it was late last year. Let's be very specific. You have to get down to the nut of these articles to figure out the date. And the date's very relevant. And then it says a small number of documents. And there are reports, very specific reports, that the classified material, the documents, include U.S. intelligence memos and briefing materials that cover Iran, the United Kingdom, and Ukraine. And the dates on these documents go back to a period back to a period, it seems, when, Hunter Biden was working for Burisma.
And one of the concerns that people expressed about the Mar-a-Lago documents is who might be able to get access to those documents. Now, we know that the Biden papers are stored at the university that's taken nearly $100 million from the Chinese government. That should be something that's a serious cause for concern. But whenever you hear these words like double standard or hypocrisy, whenever you notice that, it's not simply hypocrisy. The reality is you're identifying that the problem is who is in charge, who has power, and who is powerless. And while the Republicans win elections from time to time, the control of the institutions, whether it's the universities or most of the corporate media, even the military, the intelligence assets, the FBI, well, that is not in conservatives' hands.
Right. And just to be clear, the documents, according to reports, are dated between 2013 and 2016. Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma, the Ukrainian oil company, from 2014 to 2019. And we know that there was obvious concern within the Obama White House from people like George Kent about Hunter Biden being on that board, from George Kent and also Amos Hochstein. And I just point that out because we don't know what these documents are. But we do have people on both sides of the aisle who are going to get to the bottom of it. Senator Mark Warner, chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, expects to be briefed on what happened. And then Congressman Mike Turner, who is expected to become the chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, formally requested a review and assessment of what's going on now that this appears to be in the hands of Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, based on Fox News' reporting that the U.S. attorney in charge of this, that it's now at the discretion of Merrick Garland about what happens. But in terms of hypocrisy, we've got to play Biden on 60 Minutes.
When you saw the photograph of the top secret documents laid out on the floor at Mar-a-Lago, what did you think to yourself, looking at that image?
how that could possibly happen, how anyone could be that irresponsible.
Chris?
That should not be the initial reaction. The initial reaction should be, this is more theater from an increasingly politicized FBI that from there to the Twitter files to every other aspect of the elections has shown absolutely zero compunction on stepping into the American elections. And that's something that I don't have a lot of hope for this, but it's something the conservatives in the House really pushed through in their deal-making with Kevin McCarthy, is to return to a church committee, which investigated abuses by the FBI and the CIA decades ago. Now, it's really difficult to actually be able to get anywhere on that because everything is so partisan, whether they make it about race or about Donald Trump. But the reality is this is a problem for the American people. It's a problem of overreach from our intelligence agencies, and it should be something that concerns both liberal Democrats and conservative Republicans alike.
And this is something that Andy McCarthy, a Fox News contributor, former prosecutor within the Justice Department, wrote about in the New York Post. The liberal media are trying to protect the feds from the much-needed House Weaponization Committee, the much-needed select subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government. And he writes this very thing, that this is for the sake of the American people, that they get to the bottom of what happened with the government bigfooting, say, Twitter and social media companies to abuse the First Amendment, to censor speech, but also the Joe Biden, the entire Biden family, and this is in Andy McCarthy's words, that the media Democrat complex has strained for more than 2 years to bleach away news about millions of dollars that poured into the Biden family coffers from shady characters tied to corrupt and anti-American foreign regimes. Nothing more alarmed the framers of our Constitution than the specter of a president with awesome powers of the executive branch being bought by foreign governments. And that, again, the American people deserve to get to the bottom of that.
And people who are reading that column should understand that while Andy is a conservative pundit, as a former prosecutor, his instinct has always been to err on the side of caution when accusing the government of anything. He's generally taken the FBI side initially until facts came out later, taken prosecutor's side initially, and not been that suspicious. So for him to come out and say, look at all this evidence, this really needs to be investigated, is serious. And he had a good point in that column when he said this probably shouldn't focus on Donald Trump.
Right.
It's about the American people. And maybe it shouldn't even focus on Joe Biden because it's about the American people. The original Church Committee included everything from liberal Democrats all the way to Senator Barry Goldwater. They were looking at an increasingly politicized intelligence community, and they really changed the way that the FBI and the CIA operated after that. We reversed that after 9/11 when both the FBI and CIA had stepped up their roles in American life, stepped up their roles in domestic surveillance, and even more so in 2016, we need to rein that back in. And maybe you take a loss not looking at Joe Biden too closely and not looking at Donald Trump too closely to get to the bottom of that and get them out of American life and back where they should be, protecting Americans.
I'll leave you with this, and I'm not going to play the clip, but I'll do my best to sort of sound like her. But this is maybe not what Andy McCarthy was talking about when he said liberal media. He was probably speaking about somebody a little more highbrow. But here's what Joy Behar had to say this morning on The View. We all know that Trump is a liar and a thief. We know that. So it's not that big a jump to say that he obstructed and lied. We don't think Biden is a liar and a thief, so we give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll leave you with that, Chris. Final word to you.
Where did you go from Amtrak Joe to that beach house in Delaware and a house in the islands? I don't know.
Right, and a diamond that was given to his son, and people within the White House who were warned repeatedly about his son's Burisma board job and how that was a horrible conflict of interest. But again, hey, I didn't do my Joy Behar voice. You can thank me for that. Chris Bedford, thank you so much.
Thank you.